His fingers were already in my hair before I could step back. The whole arena saw it. 10 million lights above the sand, cameras floating like silver insects, and me standing there while Drago Ven, undefeated champion of the Eastern Ring, wrapped his hand around my braid and pulled hard enough to snap my head sideways. The crowd laughed. Not a few of them. All of them. A sound like thunder rolling across a stadium built for beings twice my size, none of whom thought a human woman belonged on that sand in the first place. My name is Nora Bennett. 3 seasons ago I was the only human who signed up for the arena trials, and I am still the only one who made it past the second round. They call me the Earth Girl. Some of them mean it as a joke. Some of them mean it as a warning to themselves, though most don't know that yet. I did not pull away when he grabbed my hair. I did not cry out. I stood there and let him hold it a second longer than he expected, because in that second I was doing something he could not see. I was counting. I was measuring the distance between his hand and his throat. I was thinking about every single time in my life pain had tried to break me and failed. He let go and stepped back, grinning at the crowd, translator drone buzzing his words into 100 languages at once. He said humans were soft everywhere, even where we grow the softest parts of ourselves. Big laugh. Bigger cheer. My trainer, Ellie Marsh, stood at the edge of the ring, gripping the railing so hard her knuckles had gone pale. I looked at Drago and said nothing. I did not need to. He would understand everything in about 4 minutes. The horn sounded and the crowd noise dropped into that low hum that happens right before something violent is about to be forgiven as entertainment. Drago came off his line fast, faster than anything with that much armor plating across its chest should be able to move. 11 straight wins had built a rhythm into him, a comfortable one, and comfortable fighters make mistakes because they stop asking questions about the person standing across from them. He reached for my hair again. Old habit. His crowd loved it, so why would he stop? I let him. I let the braid go slack in his grip instead of fighting it, and for half a second his balance shifted forward, chasing the pull he thought he was making, not realizing I had just used his own hand to bring him closer than he wanted to be. Vraxel fighters do not train for close range. Nobody does. Their kind is covered in plating from shoulder to knee, built like a wall with a pulse, and everyone in the league fights them from a distance because getting close to a wall is how you get flattened by one. Except I did not grow up learning how to fight walls. I grew up learning how to survive things bigger than me, storms, grief, long nights that felt like they would never end. My whole species has spent its history getting knocked down by things far larger than itself and finding, somehow, the one soft place they forgot to protect. His neck was that place. The plating on a Vraxel stops just under the jaw, right where the throat begins, because nothing in their evolutionary history ever needed protection there. Nothing ever got close enough to matter. I got close enough to matter. My elbow found the seam under his jaw before he even understood I had moved. It was not a hard hit by arena standards. It did not need to be. It only needed to be precise, and it only needed to land exactly where every year of training had taught my body to go without waiting for my mind to give permission. He stumbled back, more startled than hurt, and the crowd noise changed. It was not laughter anymore. It was the particular silence a few million beings make when they realize the story they walked in expecting is not the story they are going to get. Drago recovered fast. Champions do not stay champions by staying down. He came at me again, and this time his reach found my shoulder instead of my hair, spinning me half around, and for a moment the sand rushed up at an angle that made my stomach drop. I rolled with it instead of against it, the way Ellie had drilled into me 1,000 times in a gym that smelled like rubber mats and old sweat, back on a planet 40 light-years from anyone watching this fight. I came up on one knee, breathing hard, and Drago was already circling, confidence rebuilding itself the way it does in fighters who have never truly lost. He said something to the crowd again, something about how the little human had teeth after all, and they roared for him, because they wanted him to win, because they always wanted him to win, because until tonight nobody in that stadium had ever seen a reason to think otherwise. I stood up, my legs held. That surprised him more than anything I had done so far. He came in low this time, trying to use his weight to drive me back toward the ring wall, and I let him get halfway there before I dropped my center and turned into him instead of away, using his own momentum the way water uses a riverbank, redirecting force instead of meeting it head-on. It sent him stumbling past me, off balance for just a second, and a second was all I ever needed. The Vraxel fighting style depends on space. Distance is their weapon. Every strike they throw is built around the assumption that whoever they are fighting will keep backing away, keep giving them room to build power. I stopped giving him room. I stayed close, closer than any trainer back home would have called safe, close enough that his long arms could not fully extend, close enough that every strike he threw lost half its force before it landed. It was working. I could feel it working. But Drago was not stupid, whatever his opening jokes had suggested, and he adjusted. He stopped throwing wide strikes and started using his forearms instead. Short, brutal movements meant to push me back out to a range where his size would matter again. One of them caught my ribs and the air left my lungs in a rush that made the crowd noise blur into something like static. I staggered back 2 steps, the distance he wanted. He smiled and reached for my hair a third time, because old habits do not disappear just because a fight has started going differently than expected. That reach was the story he had been telling himself since the moment he first grabbed me before the match, the story where I was small and soft and his to toy with whenever he liked. I let him grab it again. This time I was ready for exactly what came next, because I had spent the whole fight waiting for him to make this same mistake one more time. As his hand closed around my braid, I twisted into the pull instead of away from it, wrapping my forearm around his wrist and driving my full weight downward and forward at the same moment. It is a simple technique. Any decent instructor back on Earth could teach it to a child in an afternoon. But simple things work when the person on the other end has never once imagined they would need to defend against them. He went down hard, the plating on his shoulder cracking against the sand with a sound the whole stadium heard through the amplified feed. I did not let go of his wrist. I used the moment to drop my knee onto the place where his shoulder met his neck, the one section of his body with no armor at all, and held it there, my braid still wrapped once around my own fist for balance. The very thing he had grabbed to mock me, now the exact thing holding him in place. The referee, a small floating drone with a single blinking light, moved in close, scanning for the signal that would end the match. Drago's hand came up once, twice, testing whether he could push through, and both times I felt the resistance fail before it could build into anything real. He was strong. He was not strong enough to move a knee that had already found the one place his body could not fight back from. The drone blinked red. The match was over. I stood up slowly, chest heaving, ribs aching where his forearm had caught me, and looked out at a stadium that had gone almost completely silent. A few scattered sounds rose here and there, uncertain, the kind of noise a crowd makes when it does not yet know how to feel about what it just watched. Somewhere far above, Ellie was on her feet, both hands pressed over her mouth. Drago pushed himself upright eventually, plating dented. Pride dented more, and for a moment we simply looked at each other across the sand. He did not offer the traditional bow that champions give losing opponents, and I did not expect him to. But he did something else, something smaller and somehow more honest. He nodded once, the kind of nod one fighter gives another when they finally understand they were wrong about something important. I fixed my braid without thinking about it, tucking it back over my shoulder the way I always did after a match, and walked toward the tunnel while the stadium finally found its voice again behind me, a wave of sound too mixed to call either cheering or booing, something closer to shock finding its way slowly into applause. In the tunnel, a Threll official met me, all soft blue skin and wide nervous eyes, the kind of official who spent more time reading data screens than watching actual fights. He asked me, almost apologetically, why I did not simply cut my hair short before matches if it kept becoming a target. I told him it was not a weakness. It was just hair. It grows back, the same way almost everything about my species grows back, given enough time and enough reason to keep going. He did not fully understand what I meant, and that was fine. Understanding was never really the point of the answer. Ellie found me a few minutes later, wrapping a cooling pack around my ribs with hands that were shaking slightly more than mine were. She did not say much. She never does after a match, not until we are somewhere quieter than a tunnel full of drones and officials. But she squeezed my shoulder once, hard, the way she used to back home after a long training session neither of us thought I would survive, and that was enough. News of the match spread faster than any fight I had been part of before. By the time we reached our quarters, 3 different networks were already replaying the moment Drago reached for my hair the final time, slowing it down, breaking it apart frame by frame, trying to explain to their audiences exactly how a fighter half his size had turned his own habit into the reason he lost. Commentators who had spent years dismissing humans as too fragile for the arena circuit found themselves searching for new words, careful ones, the kind people use when an old assumption has just quietly stopped being true. I did not watch much of it. I sat by the window instead, looking out at the lights of a city built for 100 different species, none of whom had ever expected mine to matter much beyond curiosity. My ribs ached. My scalp still stung faintly where his grip had pulled harder than it should have, but underneath all of it, something steadier had settled in, the kind of quiet that comes after proving something to yourself that you already knew but had never been forced to show anyone else. 2 days later, I received a message through the league's official channel. It was from Drago. Short, formal, translated automatically into plain and simple words. He asked to meet before the next round of matches began. I agreed, mostly out of curiosity. We met in a quiet training room away from the cameras, just the two of us and a low table between us, the kind of space fighters use to talk without an audience deciding what the conversation meant. He looked different without the crowd around him, smaller somehow, though his size had not changed at all. He said he had watched the recording of our match more times than he wanted to admit, trying to understand exactly where his assumptions had failed him. I told him the truth. I told him that pulling my hair before the match had not hurt the way he expected it to, because Payne and I had a long history that had nothing to do with him. I told him that every living thing on Earth had spent its whole existence learning how to survive things bigger and stronger than itself, and that the lesson never really goes away once you learn it. You just carry it with you, quietly, until someone gives you a reason to prove it again. He listened without interrupting, which surprised me more than anything else that day. When I finished, he said something I did not expect. He said that on his world, the biggest fighters were taught from childhood that strength alone would always be enough, that size made an opponent's tactics irrelevant. He admitted, quietly, that no one had ever taught him what to do against someone who simply refused to be afraid. I told him that was probably the most important lesson either of us would take from that match, and he laughed. A real laugh this time, not the kind meant for cameras. We did not become friends exactly. The arena circuit does not really allow for that, not between fighters who might meet again on the sand someday. But something had shifted between us, something neither of us tried to explain to the reporters who kept asking why the two of us had been seen speaking calmly in a hallway instead of trading insults for the cameras. In the weeks that followed, other fighters began requesting matches against me, for reasons that had nothing to do with mockery anymore. They wanted to test themselves against whatever it was I had shown the whole stadium that night. Some of them still underestimated me at first, out of habit more than anything else, the same way Drago had. Most of them learned quickly not to reach for my hair. Ellie kept training me the same way she always had, no differently after the win than before it, because she had never doubted what I was capable of, not once, not even on the days I doubted it myself. She used to tell me that confidence was not something you were born with. It was something you built one difficult moment at a time, stacking small proofs on top of each other until eventually you had enough of them to stand on. I thought about that a lot in the months after the Drago match. I thought about every person back home who had ever told me I was too small for something, too soft, too ordinary to matter in rooms built for people bigger and louder than me. I thought about how none of them had ever really been wrong about my size. They had only ever been wrong about what my size meant. The arena kept going, the way it always does. New fighters arriving from a dozen different worlds every season, each one certain their strength would carry them further than the last champions had. Some of them were right. Most of them eventually learned, the way Drago had, that strength without understanding only carries you so far before the ring finds your one soft place and holds you there until you learn something new. I still wear my hair the same way I always have. Long, braided, tied back just enough to keep it out of my eyes during a match. People still ask me sometimes why I never cut it, especially after everyone in the league heard the story of what happened that night. I tell them the same thing I told the official in the tunnel all those months ago. It is just hair. It grows back. So does almost everything else, given enough time and enough reason to keep standing back up. What people forget, standing outside a life like mine, is that quiet and calm were never the same thing as weak. My species spent longer learning that lesson than most of the beings sharing that stadium with me could imagine, learning it through ice and hunger and loss, long before we ever learned how to leave our own solar system behind. We are not calm because nothing has ever hurt us. We are calm because almost everything already has, and we are still here anyway. Drago lost his next 3 matches after ours, though not to me. He told me once, in that same quiet training room, that something about our fight had changed how he approached every match since, made him slower to assume, quicker to ask questions about the fighter standing across from him, instead of the size of their body. I told him that sounded like a fair trade for a bruised shoulder. He laughed again, that same real laugh, and for a moment neither of us needed to say anything else. Somewhere in the recorded history of that stadium, buried among 1,000 other matches most people will forget within a season, there is a short clip that keeps circulating anyway. It shows a tall alien champion reaching for a human woman's hair one final time, certain of exactly how the moment would end. It shows her letting him take it. It shows, in the space of about 2 seconds, an entire assumption falling apart on live broadcast in front of a few trillion witnesses. I do not watch it often. I do not need to. I remember every second of it clearly enough on my own, the way you remember the moments that quietly reshape what you believe about yourself. He thought pulling my hair was funny. The arena never forgot what happened next, and neither, in the end, did he.